Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jackie Sharpe-Ravella, and I'm here at Gateway Church today doing yet another wonderful interview with one of our congregation members. And today we have Miss Valerie Doan, and she has been at Gateway for about 9 years. But what an incredible story. You weren't here in Kennewick. You haven't been here in Kennewick your whole life. So you have been, you were raised in Tacoma, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you then lived in Vancouver and then worked your way over here to the Tri-Cities
Yep.
via marriage. But it's interesting, your story about, how God came into your life, has been a part of your life, and how he continues to be a part of your life. So let's go back a little way to Vancouver, or we can start with Tacoma, where you had mentioned to me that growing up, this is pretty cool. I've never heard of this before, but I think it's really awesome that you had these different buses that would go to different churches. So why don't we start there and have you talk about that?
All right. Well, so my home life was pretty it was in turmoil most of the time, and so the buses would come around, and depending on what area of the town we lived in, and we'd get on the bus, and sometimes it would be an incentive that you'd get a piece of cake if you took the bus to church, and cake's good. So, so I went to many different churches, but it was a kind of a fun thing. You connected with people on the bus and at the church, and that was really my only exposure in the beginning to anything church related or spiritual related, until I moved into an area where we had a neighbor lady who would have kids come over on Wednesday night and play the piano, sing songs, do macrame, and she was just really kind. So yeah, that was my upbringing in Tacoma, going on the buses, and so I didn't really understand a whole lot of it. Some of them scared me. Like I went to one church that pretty much gave me the impression that unless I was perfect, I was going to go burn somewhere,
God.
So, but others were great. You got to go on the picnics, and so that was my experience in Tacoma.
So, and how old were you when you started going on the buses to different churches?
I would say 8 or 9.
You're 9.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how did you actually land on attending one church before you moved to Vancouver?
No, I don't think so. I think the one I remember the most was the Baptist church. I think I went there the longest, and that was the one that scared me, that I was never going to be good enough to basically. Yeah, I know, unfortunately. And maybe it's just because I didn't understand the preaching, but...
Yeah, that's not a good way to start.
No.
No, that can really scare the heebie-jeebies out of you. So from there, then what took you to Vancouver?
So my mom had moved away. I was 17, and I didn't want to go with her. She was married to, I think her 4th husband, and I didn't like him. He was not a good person, and so I had a friend who lived in Vancouver with her sister, my lifelong friend. So they agreed to let me be a roommate there too. So I got on a bus with all my stuff, moved to Vancouver, lived with my friend. We worked at a restaurant, kind of living. We got to eat at work, so that was how we ate. And then it was about 6 months after living here that I met my first husband, and we ended up getting together, and pretty much then I got pregnant and we moved in with his mother. And that's where I would say my spiritual journey began, because she went to church regularly. And so then I started going to church with her. And then, of course, the kids came to church. They all went through communion, and it was a Lutheran church. Or catechism, not catechism. Yeah, was it catechism? Yeah, catechism, I think it's what it was. So I will say that I went regularly and I went faithfully, but I still didn't connect there, because it was a bunch of reciting. I don't know I can't remember the word for it now, but the hymnal was really old, and the songs were, I did enjoy a lot of them, but most of the time I was sitting there thinking, oh, please let this be over soon. So, but the kids enjoyed Sunday school, and then I started teaching Sunday school, and that was a lot more entertaining, and
right.
Yeah. So I actually learned a lot more about God and Jesus and the Bible through Sunday school, through teaching and having to learn the lessons to teach to the kids. So
Oh, wow.
I think
Sunday school teacher also. Did you all have summer
Vacation Bible School, yeah.
Okay.
And I helped with those. And that's where I learned that even if you think it's not going to go well or things aren't in place, once the kids get there, they have fun. They don't know what things you had to change or what did end up happening, because, that was always stressful though when you're getting ready for Vacation Bible School and things aren't working out, in certain directions. But by the end of it, the kids had fun. That was important. So
okay,
yeah.
That was sort of like my Vacation Bible School.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun together. Okay, so from there, so it sounds like you started developing more understanding from the time of being 6 to the time you got married and had your children. It was starting to make a little bit more sense, but you still had a little ways to go before you started really feeling a lot more comfortable. You came to the Tri-Cities. What happened after Vancouver to get you to the Tri-Cities?
Okay, so my first husband passed away in 1996. I remarried in 1997, and
Well, that's a funny story. So you have to tell that story.
Okay. So I met my husband for a blind date type thing. I think it was on a Tuesday, and the following weekend was Labor Day weekend. So he had invited me to go boating with his friends. So I agreed. And while we were there, he asked me to marry him. And I said, in the morning, if you still feel that way, let me know.
Right.
And he did, and I said yes, and we got married the next weekend. So 11 days. I don't recommend that, because I had 3 small children, my range from 11 to 15, my daughters, and they didn't even get to meet him. So here I'm having this wedding that we threw together, and so 11 days.
So you've been married for now how long?
24 years.
Wow. That's
24
awesome.
years. So, but like I said, I don't recommend it. I think it's important to get to know somebody first. So there was a lot of ups and downs for the first 8 years. And
well, you know what? That's okay, because something interesting. My parents did the same thing.
Really?
My dad, it was kind of a setup, and they met each other, and then my dad proposed that first evening.
Oh my.
Been married 60
Oh, wow.
years. Yeah.
And it worked out. So
Okay, so then you get married, and then Tri-Cities.
So we both. I started a career. I always had restaurant career. I started at the prison, in the kitchen, and then my husband was a machinist, and his job was ending, and they were going to move to Reno. So he applied there. He became an officer. So then I shortly after that became an officer. And I started in 1999. He started in 2001. Well, in 2010, they were going to close the prison we worked at, and we had the option to transfer here. So that's what we did. We transferred, and we both work out at Connell at Coyote Ridge. I love it here. I love the weather here. He does not. So I moved my grandsons and one of my daughters here, and so we got a place. And unfortunately, we had moved 3 times because I don't know why, but each time the landlords ended up wanting to sell their homes. And so now we actually purchased a home this year, and so that made it a lot easier.
That's great.
But it was through my daughter that I ended up at Gateway.
And so when you came here, you hadn't found a church yet when you initially, and then did you do some visiting of churches?
No, I might have went to one. I think I went maybe a couple times. But my daughter Sadie, who worked for Fran's Bakery, one of her co-workers, you guys might know her, Iris Ellingson, worked there and had invited her to church. And so she came, and she just was she couldn't stop talking about it. Well, she wanted me to go, and then I found out it was a Foursquare church. Well, I'd had a kind of a negative experience with a Foursquare church in Redding, Oregon, when I was taking care of my late husband's grandparents. I had gone with a lady, and it scared me, like people were flopping to the ground, and I just didn't even understand what was going on. So I'm like, I'm never going to go to one of those again. And she assured me it wasn't like that. So I came, and one of the things she said is that Pastor Mel seemed like every time he had a sermon or he was speaking, it must have been about her, because it fit in perfectly with what was going on. So I said, okay, I will go and I'll see. And sure enough, the first week that I came, one of his sermons, or one of the things he was speaking of, really hit me, it was basically he was saying to people in the congregation, I would like to see our church grow, but not at the cost of not having a personal relationship with Jesus. So if this is not the church that you're feeling that relationship with Jesus, then I want you to leave, or I want you to go and find one that does make you feel that way. And so that really impressed me, that he wasn't here to just get numbers on the books. And actually, I'd never really thought of or heard somebody talk about having the personal relationship with Jesus. So that's kind of where the beginning started. I'd done my dutiful job and taken my kids to Sunday school. I'd taken myself to church. But it was more like this is what I'm supposed to do.
Right. Kind of a ritual, this is what I do. Yeah. But then what you're saying is Gateway sort of helped you bring it all in to where it was more personal with you and your relationship with Jesus, and it just made you feel a lot more at peace, and it didn't feel like a ritual of, okay, I got to get up, set my alarm, go to church, okay, just
listen to the pastor tell me what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. And that's what's really good about, Gateway that I've seen, is that no matter who comes here, you feel a sense of peace. You don't feel pressure. You don't feel judged. You feel, kind of laid back here, and he does like he's talking to you. And so that's really good insight that you mentioned that about the relationship and the fact that he wants the church to grow, but he'd rather have you be comfortable and not have a gazillion people here.
Exactly.
And so you've been here for 9 years.
Yeah.
And you do some volunteer work here. I've noticed you hang out with the kiddos, the little toddlers. So you do daycare with them sometimes.
And and I was doing Sunday school. Mm-hmm. I think that because of my experience growing up and the situation I lived in, that was unhealthy and not good. But I had those adults outside of my home who would reach out and try to help me. And I wanted to do the same. I wanted to be that adult that would give back to kids, or maybe be that person. I can't tell you the names of the people, that helped me, but I remember everything about them, just not always their name. So, and I know that that's the point. Those people probably didn't care if I was going to grow up to be an adult and remember their name. They just wanted me to remember the experience, and so that's kind of how I have lived my adult life. I've been a Campfire Boys and Girls volunteer. I've done the Sunday school because I wanted to be there for maybe somebody who might need it. So
and pay it forward.
You're right.
That's a really good thing I try to tell people too, is somebody there helped me, and so I pay it forward. And when I pass it on to that person, I said, okay, now you pay it forward too. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us today. This is really a good journey that you went through. You started at one point at 6 years old, and then you came here in Gateway, and through all those experiences, you found a place where you feel really comfortable, and you have that relationship with God. And we're still learning and growing and learning things.
Right.
But thank you again, Valerie, for being with us today. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And thank you for listening to yet another fabulous interview from one of our congregation members at Gateway Church. Stay tuned. We'll have another one next month. Take care.